Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Jen Marples Show. Today, I have a gorgeous guest from across the big pond. She is dialing in from Lisbon, Portugal, and her name is Patrice Poltzer. She's the head of Patrice Poltzer Creative, and they help people and brands tell their story. She's an award-winning former Today Show producer and was nominated for something called an Emmy that you might have heard of for her fabulous storytelling videos. So she currently runs her business from Portugal, but she is from the Chicago area and was most recently in New York for many, many, many years. And so her and her family just made the big leap to go across the pond with her 3 kids. They wanted to live abroad. So they're living the dream, living in Europe in a really beautiful city in Lisbon. And she's literally running her business from Lisbon. So it's all a virtual online business now. And she's going to share all her hot tips with us. And she's also a really good friend. We are in a leadership group together, and we met like a year and a half ago. And she's absolutely fabulous. And she's also been a guest star in some of my masterminds. And a really funny story is that we realized, I have some dear friends of 20 plus years, Emily Foley, if you're listening, we realized she was having Thanksgiving dinner at like my dear, dear friend's home, like last Thanksgiving. And we're like, what? Mind blown. Just proof time and time again that the world is very, very small. So Patrice, welcome. And I'm so glad you're here with us finally. We were joking before we got on, like how hard it is to figure out time zones and what's going to work. And so it's almost happy hour for her in Lisbon. And it's early for me here in San Francisco, but we're getting it done. We finally connected.
We did. And you are right. It is, you know, when you say it's 5 o'clock somewhere, it is actually 5:02 in Lisbon. So here we are.
So it's the last thing you'll do this week work-wise, hopefully. And hopefully you're having some, whatever, what is like is there a national drink of Lisbon or for Portugal? Like,
you know what? It is just Aperol Spritz season all year round now. And it's not something I'm used to. So, but you know, Lisbon is obviously known for wine and port. Port is the national drink, but I don't really drink port. So
yeah, port's like after dinner wine, kind of very sweet. I never would have thunk it. I never would have thought Aperol would have like, crossed the border. You think Italy, you think Aperol Spritz.
No, it's like my summer started in March. You know, and you're a West Coast girl, so this is probably not a new thing for you, but I'm just constantly confused. I'm like, it is April. I'm like, it is supposed to be cold still, and it's hot here. Like we go to the beach. I'm still not fully immersed into this European like sun life, so it's all very confusing.
Well, I love it. And you're showing how it's done. And everybody, I'm going to give you all the details about Patrice when we're wrapped up, but you've got to follow her on Instagram because she shares, surprising stories of her being in Portugal. And so she's telling it like it is, and it's really amazing. And she's going to explain to you the power of all of that as we go through today's interview. So let's get cracking.
Yes, let's hit it.
We're hearing about storytelling a lot. Yeah. My clients hear it from me. Yeah. People are hearing it on the interwebs where it's like personal branding, being authentic, storytelling. Yeah. Let's break it down. Like, what is it? And why is it so important and critical for your business today to be telling your story?
All right. Oh, you're starting big, aren't you? Wow.
We're going to jump into the deep end. We're jumping into the deep end.
No small talk. So, storytelling, you do hear a lot about that now, right? And to the point where, unfortunately, oh wait, sorry, sorry. Are you edit this, Jen?
We do.
Okay, sorry. Let me just turn off my Slack. I'm sorry, because I don't want that going off. Sorry. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, I am back. All right. Do you want to ask me that question again in case you want to have a clean edit?
Sure. This is coming from our former Today Show producer.
I was going to say, I don't want to mess up your editor. So let's do that question again. Take 2.
Okay. So we're hearing a lot, and especially those of us who are dialed in to what's happening in business and how we need to show up. Certainly my clients in my world are hearing it from me about the power of storytelling, your personal brand, being authentic. And I think a lot of it's kind of getting lost in translation, and people don't know, like, does being authentic mean I have to cry on camera and share like the gory details? Like, what does it all mean? So my first part of the question is like, really, what does this all mean? And then the second part of that is, why is it so important for business today to show up and tell your story and be authentic?
Yeah. So I do think there's this connotation with storytelling that people think it means going on social media and airing all your dirty laundry, and being vulnerable is, sharing every sob story that has ever happened to you. And somehow that has been equated, well, that's vulnerable storytelling and that's what you need to do. And that's not true. In terms of business and in terms of marketing, and this is not a new concept, but I do think because we have so many people now that have their own businesses, I mean, that's unprecedented. The barrier to entry to starting a business used to be much higher than it is now. And now you just need an internet, you need a phone, you don't even need an original idea. So storytelling is having this resurgence because at the end of the day, storytelling is being able to emotionally connect to another human. If you strip everything away and all the fancy jargon and structure, at the end of the day, it's a mechanism, a communication mechanism used to garner the attention of someone else and to emotionally connect with them. And the reason that storytelling is so powerful in terms of business is there is no other marketing tool that has the ability to actually cognitively get into the brain of a complete stranger. So if you think about this, when you are hearing a good story, and this has happened to all of us, if you hear something that like hits your soul, you sometimes get deja vu, or you get goosebumps, or sometimes you can just start to tear up and you don't even know where that's coming from. That's called neural coupling. There's an actual scientific name to it. And it means that when you experience this cognitive power of a good story by another person, your brain waves start to mirror the brain waves of the person telling the story. So if you think about this from a business perspective, that is insanely powerful. Nothing else does that. SEO doesn't do that. Consistently showing up and hammering, the features and benefits of your product and service doesn't do that. Like nothing else does that. So when we are now in this environment where there are millions and millions of people online and everyone's hawking a product, everyone has the same service, there's a million people in marketing, there's a million health coaches, there's a million therapists, how on earth are you supposed to cut through that noise? And the fastest way to cut through that noise is to hone in your own storytelling skills, because then you ensure that when you show up in your business and you know how to storytell and you understand your audience, you understand what they want to hear, and you can tell narratives around that to get their attention. And attention is the currency. So that's what we're after. It's not so much like, I'm not talking about even selling. Storytelling has the ability to capture the attention of a complete stranger on the other side of these squares faster than anything out there.
And it seems like, because we talk about, of course, in marketing, like the know, like, and trust. And to your point, there's a million of everything. There's a million people in marketing. There's a million realtors. There's a million this, there's a million that. There's a million, supplements. There's just a million of everything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
people just have to get over that, because there's a million of everything. So don't let that be your barrier. But I feel like, and we know, it's interesting to just think about who we're attracted to and why we're attracted to those people. And it's mostly to do with storytelling and showing up, and you're getting an insight. So you trust folks. And then I know you talk about, and I want you to go into this a lot, it's making me think about it, sort of you're attracting people in versus like hammering and shoving things down your throat and like going on pain points. Like, if this sucks, or you're fat and you need to do, we're not doing that anymore. It's more like, okay, if I'm a health coach, I have solutions, but I'm not going to go out there like, are you feeling fat and you want to get skinny for da-da-da season? Like, that is not how you're going to do what you do anymore. Right. So it's a whole different way of doing things and bringing people in. Can you talk about that a little bit more, like sort of the attraction of it?
Yeah. So attraction marketing is always, that's also not a new concept, but we live in a different world now. And not to be cliche, but social media really has changed everything. And the world that we live in and the world that we run businesses in is not the world of a decade ago or even 5 years ago. And so that's a good and a bad thing, in my opinion. The good thing is that, you know, it's much easier to create. It's much easier to get a business idea off the ground. It's democratized a lot of that barrier. You know, you don't need to come from a rich family. You don't need to, you know, be born. I mean, you can really like do whatever your mind thinks is possible. However, the flip side of that is that it is much harder because of all the noise. And so when we are talking about attraction, because our brains are just bombarded with content at such a rate that's not normal. Like our brain should not be, we can't handle all this content coming at us. We're actually doing anything we can to literally swipe left and figuratively swipe right. So the storytelling becomes the attraction, because if we hear something, anything that we can identify with or that we resonate with or we see ourselves in someone else, it's like our brain goes to a different mode and we say, yeah. And so the storytelling allows us to literally swim through all the muck. And also it takes the pressure off, because for most of us who are starting businesses, we're not trying to be Netflix. We're not trying to compete with Amazon. We just want our little pocket of the internet. We want our little pocket of people. We only want to work with the people that we should be working with. You know, most of us aren't interested in building these mass scalable businesses. You know, most of us want to have businesses that keep us financially stable, allow us to live how we want to live, and create some impact. And you don't need a massive audience to do that, but you need the right audience to do that. And in order to get that right audience, to me, storytelling is the shortcut. And I don't think there's like a lot of shortcuts to business, but if I had to choose one, storytelling is the ultimate shortcut, because if you can master that, and especially in a video, you know, I come from video land, just of my background. If you can effectively show up on video and convey your message and really like hit home to your audience, that's the shortcut. You're going to get your people in through your door a lot quicker.
I love it. You share a lot on your Instagram, which is really great. Everyone, you're going to go follow her.
Sorry, husband. Sorry,
you know,
Allie.
we all play in sickness and in health, and in Instagram and not. You know, it's a new part of the vows these days, right? It's like
yeah,
everybody.
Yeah.
Can you explain, because you're very vocal about it on Instagram, like how you've changed the trajectory of your own business using your own tools? I think it's a really great story, because I'll let you tell it, because I know your story. You tell it.
Well, it's ironic because so my background is I was a Today Show producer for 6 years. I worked at CNN. I was in Bloomberg TV. Like I came from, similar to you, I came from that traditional media background. And so I spent my career telling other people's stories. My whole career at the Today Show was picking stories, getting them on air, producing them, interviewing people. Yet when I was in a position where I was running my own business, I was a total blind spot. I was a blind spot to my own storytelling ability. So when I first got into my business, you would not know that I had a business for 3 years. At the top of 2017, I started a video company in New York City. I didn't have an Instagram. I didn't have a LinkedIn. I didn't even have a website. I almost prided myself, like, oh, I'm word of mouth. Like I am, people just know about me, and I don't need that, all that. I don't need to show up for my business because I have a business. And that worked until it literally didn't work anymore. And one of the reasons it didn't work anymore was, well, obviously COVID, right? COVID shut me down. And when your whole business is literally predicated on you closing brand deals, and COVID shut that down, I mean, I had zero income coming in. I come from a 2-income family. I was living in New York City. I was pregnant with my third, or this is in 2020. So this is not like, this is not like a hobby business, like this is a business that contributed to the financial health of my family. And so when that happened, I was in a corner. I was like, oh my God, I need to do something. I need to do something quick. And so I got online, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I had this feeling. I'm like, I need to figure something else out. And so when I got online, I knew I needed to like show up, but it still did not hit me that I needed to tell my own story. So I did what most people do in the beginning. I thought that, you know, getting online meant showing how knowledgeable you were. And part of that is because I was impostery, right? I was just like, I don't know, like, who am I? Like, what? I don't have any knowledge. Like, I make videos. Like, who wants to know about making videos? I was not thinking, like, I was not thinking big. It wasn't until I actually took a mastermind where the woman in the mastermind, she literally like whipped me into shape. She's like, what's wrong with you? She's like, seriously. She goes, she goes, she goes, you know what she said to me, which I thought was interesting. And this relates to the story, so I'll turn it back. But she was from the middle of America. And she is to this day one of the most successful people that I know in the online space. She's actually out of the online space now because she now just builds startups and she's so immensely successful. But she always told me, she goes, it's always it's the coastal people. It's like the New York people, people from, you know, Chicago or LA, because when you're in these cities and before COVID, you didn't really need to be online. Like it didn't really like online business. What are you talking about? And when I met her, she goes, for people like me, who come from not, you know, a small town in the middle of America where we didn't have the same opportunities, your opportunity was to make it. And your opportunity was to like, I'm sorry, you had to get online. Like if you had an idea or if you didn't have access to higher education or wealth or something. And so she kind of like showed me this world of like all these people doing incredible things online. And I had never heard of it. And so she really widened my world. And so I'd say by the end of 2020, she told me, she goes, you need to start like, first of all, you need to teach people how to storytell because that's what you do. She goes, but you need to start storytelling for yourself. She goes, be the example. I was like, oh my God, how did I like, it's just a wild when it's yourself, right? You can't see it. You can't see it when it's you. And so when I did that, I remember everything changed. I remember the day. I remember I was in the day, I was home, you know, it was COVID. I was pregnant. I had a 3-year-old and I had a 6-year-old home in my small New York apartment. And New York was not a great place to be at the top of COVID. Let me tell you that. And I just remember I had this moment where I was like going insane. I'm like, what is going on? And I remember I just turned the camera on me and I started talking to the camera and I was like real. I was like a real human for the first time. I stopped doing these like, let me tell you the 3 things about productivity. And I would like post that to my Instagram. It was so embarrassing. I got like 2 likes. One of them was a bot. One of them was my mom, you know, and it was like when the moment I turned the camera on myself and just started actually sharing a moment, I got so many comments from real humans, not robots. And it sort of like the light bulb went out. I'm like, oh my God, I don't need to follow these formulas of how to build an audience on social media, like do tips and do this. I'm like, I'm just going to be myself. Obviously you have to know thy audience and look, you figure this out. But at the bedrock and the basis of my pivot to like away from only video services for clients and brands, this pivot at the base of it is telling real stories, like stories about my life and my experiences and my moments, and then interweaving that. And that has allowed me, to move to Europe. It saved my business. It really did. And I'm not even being dramatic.
Well, there's a couple of things there I want to unpack. I think I've never heard that from the business coach that you had that thought process of sort of the middle America versus the coasts, because yeah, you're in New York, San Francisco. There's so many things that are around us that you don't, I mean, we all have to work hard, but it wasn't as hard to like get connected and meet people, but thinking about if you don't, and I do actually, you're making me think of all the women that I talk to across the country, coming from small towns, they don't have groups. They don't like, I can walk out, I can like find a support group or women in business just going to yoga. Like I have people all around me and I didn't even really think about it that way just until you said it, how different it is if you're kind of anywhere, but in these pockets where you have all these resources.
It's fascinating. And look, that's changed now because of the COVID, but like prior to that, you know, I didn't know who Amy Porterfield was. I didn't know who Maria Forleo, like all these kind of like these bigger names in the space. And I remember when I kind of discovered who they were in 2020, and there is a whole industry that was going on. And I'm not like, it was like, where have I been? And my friend's like, you've been working at 30 Rock and in New York. Like you've been working in New York. Like you haven't, but like, by the way, there is a ton of interesting things going on this side of the, like over here. And I have completely now stepped into that world.
I think it's really exciting because, especially for me, like just being so passionate about helping women succeed and do what they want, that truly there's no barrier to entry to even test something. So if women are working full time and they want to kind of try something, like you don't have to, talked about this with Bronwyn on my last podcast, no one has to burn any boats. You can just kind of take things out and see how things go. And I want to ask you this question, because I was just talking to a client who's never gone out on her own.
Okay.
And she's in financial services. It's a very solid business working for other people. She's finally going out her own. And it's so hard, right? It's so, for people who've never done it before, it's hard because it really is hard, right, Patrice? So
it's so hard.
so what do you say to those women out there who are like, they know they have to show up?
Yeah.
And there's the imposter syndrome you mentioned. Women are afraid of judgment. And, when I went out on my own, everyone's heard my stories. Trolls came, people close to you, come to you when you start to go out there. What do you say to your clients and the women you work with? Like, how do you overcome all that to actually show up and tell your story?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, it is a real fearful thing. I mean, like I said before, I came from that world and it still took me 3 years to actually open my mouth in my own business, right? So I understand that fear. The thing I will say about that though is you get to a point where you realize a few things. Number one, I had this realization that no one cares more about the well-being of my life than me. No one cares more about what I want to do with my family and my children and my dreams than me. No one cares about my business more than me. So if I am the trailblazing leader of my business, of my life, of my well-being, and I'm the one that cares the most, and I cannot show up for that, how on earth do I expect other people, complete strangers, to actually galvanize around my business? There's a huge disconnect there. So when I had that realization, it was like this thing lifted where I'm like, oh my God, yeah, like get over yourself. And the other thing too is, and it's funny, I'm teaching this right now in one of my storytelling programs. We're going through personal brand affirmation, and it sounds hokey and it sounds one of these things like, oh, what's your mission statement? And that doesn't mean anything, but truly it's like really getting in touch with why you're choosing this path, because entrepreneurship is not for everyone. I actually think a lot of people shouldn't do it. I think people are sold a bag of goods that they shouldn't be sold, that everyone's being sold that you can make 6 figures a month selling a digital product. And I think it's false. Like there are some people that have not good ideas. They don't have the skills. They don't have the ability. They shouldn't do it, right? Like do something, like stay in your lane. However, the people that are choosing this path and like know they have something viable, they know they can, you have to get in touch with like that deeper reason. You're not doing this for the trolls. Like you're not showing up for the people that are going to be against you. You're actually showing up to find the people that really need you and they really need to hear you. And that's what keeps me going. I mean, and it's like, I say this to everyone, like I have a folder, and it's just like an awesome folder, and any single testimonial, compliment, random DM, I push it all, I put it all in there, and it's just a great hub spot for me to have, because there are so many moments where I feel low, or I don't want to show up, or I'm like feel that I'm behind, or I'm not saying anything that unique. And I have to remind myself of, Allison, or remind myself of Maria, or I remind myself of Natalie. Like, there are women that I know I have made real impact in their business and then subsequently their lives. And so I just think about them. I'm like, oh, those are the people I'm reaching. So it kind of, now it's not a perfect formula. Like you still feel bad, but I think your mission has to be stronger than the mess in your head. It has to feel, purposeful, and you have to feel like there's real meaning. And meaning means different. I don't mean meaning like everyone needs to, like cure a disease. Like that's not whatever your meaning is for showing up. That has to be just a little bit stronger than that crippling fear in our brains that we all have that tells us to not show up.
Well, I'm glad
Sorry,
you
that was
said all
really
that.
long.
And I've said that for years too. You can't care what people think. I have a whole podcast episode dedicated to it, but it's very hard. Having said that, and I'm always transparent. Like when I first started doing it, and you get the scratched heads, and the dad's like, "What's a podcast?" Somebody who, when I went out with my podcast, like kind of almost ripped me a new one. Like, I hate your marketing and it sucks. And she later apologized because she didn't even like listen to the podcast. It was a whole crazy thing. So a lot of that, that happens and it's real. But I'm glad you brought up the point of remembering who you're serving and why you're remembering your why, right? Of why you're doing what you're doing. And I tell like the women I work with, like, think about the person who's out there, like think of one person even, and it helps kind of get the jitters out and go, if you can help like Sarah or Mary, talk to Mary or Sarah. You're not talking to your sister. You're not talking to your college roommate. You're not talking to your neighbor. You're talking to those women that you're going to help. And you probably found this, the people that are attracted to you aren't really going to be those people in the front, and those aren't the people that you're actually helping anyway. So you've got to just be you, right?
Yeah, 100%. And part of it is like, you just get better at managing that because, all the thoughts are still there and they still live in your brain. It's just, they become quieter or you become better. Because I always, I just said this yesterday to my group, like, if we ran our businesses based on how we feel every single day, that is a really risky decision because our feelings are always changing. Like we can feel one way and literally feel a different way 30 minutes later by doing a few different things. So like you can't run your business on how you feel. And it's the same, and showing up for your business, this is not like a cute thing. Like this is my marketing engine. Like this is drives revenue to my business. So if I actually can't I can't not do that or not do that based on how I feel that day, because that is a really important part of my marketing strategy.
That's a really great point to make. So I wanted that, it's a nice segue into this question. Where have you seen, because I know you've worked with so many people, where have you seen people really get it wrong? And it could just be your clients or people you see out there, and you don't have to name names, of course. And then how are people really getting it right? If you could share a couple examples, I think that would be really fun.
Okay. So the people that are getting it wrong, and in the sense of wrong, like maybe there's lots of room for improvement, is people think that showing up consistently means they're telling a story. Showing up consistently on LinkedIn, in a newsletter, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, on a pod, whatever, showing up all the time doesn't mean you're consistently connecting. And so the biggest miss that I see is like, there are people that I follow that they're in my bubbles every single day, or they're in my feed every single day. And I still am like, what are they saying? I don't really understand the point of that post. I don't understand the point of that video. So there's a real disconnect between, well, I'm showing up for my business. Like I am showing up, it's like, well, are you showing up and just talking, or are you showing up with, a strategy? Are you showing up with a, with a point? And so the other thing too that I see is I have this framework called strategic storytelling. And in the center, and so if you have like a Venn diagram, strategic storytelling lies in the center of, you have your life moments in one bucket, you have what your audience cares about in another bucket, and then you have your business mission, personal brand in another bucket. And what usually happens is a business owner is typically not doing all three of those buckets. They're missing a bucket. So to give you an example, I see a lot of business owners do this. They show up in their marketing and in their content, and they don't like to talk about themselves, right? They're like, it's about the product. It's about the service. It has nothing to do with me. So I'm just going to be like Wizard of buzz behind the scenes, anonymous. So what happens is they might have like really great business type content that the audience cares about, which is awesome. But what happens is over time, that's going to become you're going to be a commodity. Your business is going to get vanilla because all you're doing is problem solution type of content, which is important. But the secret sauce lies in the life moments bucket. So if you remove that personal kind of like special spice, then your content's going to be boring. Now, the flip side of that is there are some people that have no problem showing up and talking about, their life, and they're open, and that's great. And maybe they have a lot of followers, and maybe, they get a lot of views or open rates, but they're not making sales, or they're not converting, or they're not growing like, their audience, how they want to grow. You got to be careful that you're not just showing up and people are following you because they find you entertaining, or they want to know, like, where your kid's going to college, or what's Jen wearing today. Like, you still have to bring it back to the business. And then just to kind of complete the trifecta, I see this a lot where people that do the other, so they remove the audience. So they show up and they talk and they weave it to their business, but they don't really know their audience that well. So they're talking about business stuff, which is great, and they're maybe weaving in their moments. But if it's not what your audience cares about, then it's not going to hit. So you really need to have a little bit of each of those buckets to really have what I call like a strategic storytelling framework.
I love that. Y'all, this is a masterclass in storytelling in case you haven't figured it out. And I'm glad you're talking about this because I know, and I want to ask you this other question in a second. And it's about how you don't need millions of people. You just need a few raving fans. We'll talk about that in a second. But I've seen it time and time again where everyone they equate the numbers, like the numbers of followers with success.
Sure.
And how many people do we know? I have clients that have this who on the outside, tens of thousands of followers and are making $0.
Oh yeah.
It's very low money. Flip side, I had a client who launched recently with like less than 1,000 followers, brand deals, cash money, because exactly why you're talking to, knowing who she's talking to, knowing who she is, knowing what she's offering.
Yep.
And so that is so powerful because you don't need 1 million people to make money. We've all heard that. So I've heard you say this time and time again, and we talk about the newsletter list. I bang that drum too. So for everybody out there, and if you're starting and you're just getting started on social media, or your LinkedIn died and now you want to, re-energize it. No one needs 55 clients. I mean, unless you're selling toothbrushes. I mean, that's maybe a different strategy. But when you were talking kind of like this entrepreneurial thing, services, your thought leadership, you got to focus on those people. And then I think naturally, then you start growing and attracting other people, but you've got to be clear. So talk to us about why it's better to have like 1,000 raving fans than 50,000 people who just want to see your cute outfits, who are never going to freaking buy a thing from you.
So I had a client that had almost 70,000 followers on Instagram. She was a genius at content. She went viral all the time. She had about 4,500 email subscribers. And she was making like $1,000. She was making nothing from her business. And so, prime example, right? You would look at her from the outside. You'd be like, oh my God, she's getting literally millions of views on her reels every single time she does a reel. This chick must be raking it in. She was not raking it in. And I'm a great example of someone who has a small audience. I have 1,500 email subscribers. I have less than 9,000 Instagram followers, and I have a multiple six-figure business. And it is because I have a hot audience. You do not need a large audience, but you need a hot audience. And in the way, and just what we've been talking about, the way that you cultivate a hot audience is, I don't need masses. I just need a handful of people that believe in what I do and that are going to buy my stuff. And so one of the keys to my success, and this is also not a new concept, is usually your most loyal customers are like make the bulk of like your revenue. And in my case, I cannot tell you how true that is. Like, I have people in my world that have literally bought every single thing I've ever released. And the thing is, they become your ground evangelist. So this is where this 1,000 fans comes. And by the way, like 1,000 raving fans is harder than it seems. I kind of think because we're so, numbers seeds to like not really mean much sometimes in this social media nebulous world, right? Oh, I have 10,000 followers, or like I have 2,000 followers, but 1,000 diehard fans, that's tough to do. But the rule of thumb is that's all you need. So it's tough, but it's not tough because it takes this pressure off of like masses. We don't want masses. We want people that are going to buy your stuff and then buy the next thing and then tell 5 of their friends because you've actually changed their life. That is the power of when you really focus on, not on masses, but you focus on depth. And I say this because I wasn't always like that. Like, I mean, I should show you, like, from 2.5 years ago, I actually was writing a newsletter the other day, and I stumbled across this old Evernote document I had, and I used to track like my Instagram followers, like maniacally, like literally like every other week I would track it, and I like literally like my week would, how I felt about myself would literally ebb and flow on how many new followers I got on my Instagram. I mean, it's just insane. And so it wasn't until, well, first of all, that was just like not sustainable for me. Also, I'm not an influencer. So at some point too, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not trying to be an influencer and get a brand deal, right? So I kind of like switched my mentality because I was like, for the sake of trying to grow wide, I was sort of not giving my all into the people that like were there. And another like example to kind of hit this home is this is like for any of you who ever do lives, like if you do a LinkedIn live or if you do an Instagram live, there is nothing worse than let's say you start at 9 a.m. and there's always going to be people you let in, they're there at 9 a.m. and you say, let's just wait 5 more minutes, or let's just wait until X minutes and you know what that tells? It tells probably your most hottest potential prospects and buyers who are there at 9 a.m. sharp at your live, wanting to hear from you, excited to hear from you. You just told them that they're not as important as maybe the other people that aren't in the door yet, but we're going to wait for those other people to come to the door. And you know what? And I heard this from someone once years ago, and it stuck in my brain, and it really changed how I view things. And so I now have like, sure, top of sales and funnel growth is very important, but I'm realizing is that it's not as important as nurturing the people that are already in your circle and incentivizing them to work on your behalf. That is just as powerful as creating a top of sales funnel that gets all these random people in your funnel that you still need to nurture because they don't know you yet.
Right.
But people are way more likely to buy, let's say, my higher ticket Founders Fire program because of my alumni who have already told their friends. And I know that 3 people are saving for my fall cohort to apply because they came from Alex because she told me, because I could, like, that's powerful. Like, it's like nurture, take care of your people and give your people, your VIPs, like all of you, because I have found that has been a real crucial part of my business strategy.
I'm really glad you brought this up because it's almost like it's like old school sort of marketing and relationship marketing. And we forget. I had told a client when she launched her business this a few months ago, I said, don't forget to send a friends and family email. It's like the thing we always forget to do. Send a friends and family email and then tell your friends and family, like if there's anybody here, I mean, depending on the cost of your things, people want to help, and like, don't assume that they'll work with you, but if anybody needs my help, send them my way. I've done this before with programs, with like exactly what you're saying with old clients. If you refer somebody, here's a referral fee. Like, we're all in this together. So there's other ways to slice and dice and utilize the people who know you and will go to bat for you and be like, you got to work with Patrice, you got to work with Jen. That's the easiest sale you're going to get versus like some random on the internet, like like, they're coming in because they like your pretty red shirt and they want to like maybe move to Lisbon, but are they going to work with you? We don't know.
Yes.
We don't know.
That, and you just hit the nail on the head. And look, and again, I say this not because I'm like, oh, this is what I say this because I did everything opposite, right? And so, and also things work differently for people, right? I mean, there are people that there's always anomalies, right? There's always exceptions to whatever you say is like the truth. There's always going to be people that did it the complete opposite way, right? But I remember even for myself, so when I did have that aha moment in COVID, when I turned the camera on me and I got all these comments, I actually pendulum swung too far. So I went so far that people thought I was a mom blogger. I mean, literally, people were like, I'm like, oh my God, I would say, I remember there was one time I was talking to someone who I met, I forget, and I said that I had the video business. They're like, you have a video business? I'm like, oh my God. Like, again, it's this bucket, right? I was so over indexed on life moments, so too much. And my audience loved it. It was like catnip. I had pregnant 2 kids in New York City. It's a bit voyeuristic. We live in, and I didn't have a washer dryer. Like, I'm walking up 3 flights of stairs with like 20 bags. People are like, are you insane? Like, so there was this voyeuristic element to like watching my days. And in the beginning, I'm like, oh, wow, this is cool, right? Like, I'm getting views or like people are watching me, but it doesn't matter if they're not going to buy my products. And so I then had to course correct because I was like, oh my God, I have all these followers and they're like, some of them are like my mom's friends, right? Like, oh, like my aunts or something, I'm like, oh my God, they're not going to buy my storytelling programs. So it really is important to try to diagnose, I tell people when they feel like they are doing a lot in their marketing or they are showing up or they're doing this or they're doing that and they're not getting the results, you can usually diagnose using my framework. One of the buckets is usually like really absent, and just by sprinkling in a little bit more or taking away a little bit of one bucket, you kind of tend to find like the groove or the magic sweet spot. This is assuming you have a good product and service, by the way. If your product and service is crap, then no, I don't care how good of a storyteller you are, that you will be found out, right? The good quality is just nosebleed tickets for us right now. And that's the thing. Like, I'm talking about like, you have the goods to back it up. And you're still not getting the results that you want and you're showing up. It's usually a miss somewhere in those buckets.
One important question I want to ask, because I hear this all the time. I even hear it from my husband. Like, people think that they can completely outsource social media to get all this like wonderful return. So let's talk about that for a minute, because
oh man,
it goes back to our, who are you really talking to? And I feel like just the complete outsource is just throwing shit out there because you feel like you need to have so many like little squares on Instagram and this, that, and the other, but you're going to kind of have a whole lot of nothing. And I was just having this conversation with my husband. He told me to kind of shut up because it was like I was getting too much in his business. He's a partner in a real estate firm. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to step back so I don't get divorced. But I see this time and time again, and people ask me like, oh, I just need somebody to do my social media. Tell us the truth. Tell us what everybody doesn't want to hear, Patrice.
Yeah, no. First of all, I get it because I also have gone down that path where you get into a mode because, I'm not aesthetic. I'm not a designer. I don't even talk to me about like putting furniture in an apartment. It is like I'm really bad at it. And so social media, there's an aesthetic component, right? Or there used to be. That used to be more important. It's not as important anymore, thank God. But, there's this notion of like, I just need pretty squares. And so automatically, there's this idea like, well, I have to like look a certain way. But to that end, there's also this pressure to constantly be creating. And I'm sorry, for most of us, we're not social media people telling people how to do social media. So if you're not in that business, you're running your business. Like, I don't have time to be on social media all day. So the outsource thing is a real thing. And if I'm being honest, I am still figuring out how I can help myself because I have tried to outsource. I've hired someone like, all right, let's give this a go. Here's my voice. Like, you see what I do. Let's write some posts. Never. It has never worked. And not to say that it hasn't worked because I'm the best, but at the end of the day, you're actually paying someone to be a less authentic version of you. I can't tell you how many people have come to me and are like, okay, can you do the story? Or can you just do this? Or they want to outsource everything. And I tell them, no, I can't actually, because this story is so important that actually it needs to come from you. And so I think the way that I've been able to successfully outsource some social media, it's through like editing. So for example, I have a video editor because I'm in video production, and so what I do is I have a Google, I put all my content, my whole phone uploads to Google Drive, better than Apple, for organization for video and photos. And so I have buckets. So I have like B-roll, I have photos, work B-roll, and she has access to all of that. And so what she'll do is she's able to edit videos for me using my footage. And then I will give her the script, or like if I need to put like, a hook on it, but I do my captions. Also, I use AI. Like I teach this as well. Like AI has been my best friend. And I don't mean AI to write my stuff, but like using AI to actually do audience connectivity work. I teach my students how to actually tap into like the emotional psychographics of their audience in a really intelligent way, especially if you don't have budget for marketing team, which most small business owners and solopreneurs don't. But if you are able to actually get to the root of what your audience wants to hear, using AI, writing content in your own voice, that's another way that's I've found that is like cut the workload. But totally and 100% outsourcing social media, unless it is a product, I have never seen anyone do it like successfully. Even like people like Jasmine Star, or people that are like massive, they still do their social. Like she is still showing up in her videos. She's talking to the camera. Like now, does she have probably someone that is a full-time video person for social telling her, like, here's what you're doing today. Here's your schedule. I need you to record this. I need you to do this. I need you. But she has a project manager, I'm sure, telling her what to do, but she is still doing her social. Like you can't like replace that. Another thing too, and also for you, Jen, what I do a lot is I take my podcast. So I don't have a podcast, but if I'm on a podcast, I'll take the audio, and my team will take audio from interviews and they'll use that as the overlay. And then my girl will edit video, and I'll have little pieces that I cut. And so that's another like easy way that I've found to outsource. But it's you can't really outsource the whole thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this because clients will come to me and like, could you completely outsource? I'm like, you're going to lose that. But there are, to your point, because I have an admin who I couldn't do any of this without like my video reels for my podcast. There's constant content creation, and it becomes super overwhelming. But I know like systems, getting the proper administrative support. So it's still me, it's still my content. She's going to chop this up. She's going to put this on YouTube for me. She's going to edit my couple of reels that come from it. I pull out the quotes, and then, we have a system. She puts them in all the quote, so there's a whole system. So it's really about systems, but it's 100% me. And that's what I tell with my clients too. It's like, you can't outsource you. And so the product thing's a little bit different. Or if you have, say you're in real estate, so someone could like post some listings and things like that, but you got to pepper you in.
Well, that's the thing.
All of that, right?
And you're whatever you're telling your husband, you're right, because I can imagine. And it's funny. One of my best friends from New York is a real estate agent, and she is like this funny, gorgeous Irish girl who works in the fanciest real estate team in like Manhattan. It's like they are like Bravo type people, and then you have her, and she's like this down home like Irish girl, and her social media is so bad. I'm like, I'm gonna send her this, and I tell her all the time. I'm like, I'm not even gonna say her name out loud. I go, but person, you like, please, like, stop posting listings of like how it's sold for. No one cares. Like, and so again, like real estate is that industry. So I even though I say like product marketing or product people, can maybe outsource a bit, if you want to cut through the noise, because odds are there's 10,000 other cookie makers and 10,000 other bag jewelry makers in your space, you still need to show up and infuse yourself. And yeah, you cannot outsource you. But I love what you said. It's the systems. You can outsource having systems that like, what's the cadence here? Because actually sometimes it's not even like the social media. It's just like, what am I creating and how does it go from like the brain to the grid? And if you have that all worked out in a system, then it becomes a bit more manageable.
Right. And that's how I help clients too. So I've turned them on to sort of my support services too. And I have a current client who's, doing one thing, and it's really easy to do that once you put the systems in place. But, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, people just starting out, it's the systems. It's like, you're going to live and die by systems and getting a process in place. And then also we're kind of going off on social media a little bit, but the long and short of it is everyone, it's not, you don't need millions. You can actually even have 100, and depending on what it is that you sell, like you might be a $2,500 an hour coach. Like, how many clients do you need, right? Like, you don't need 1,000 even. So just depending, I'm just thinking about when I had my PR firm, we only worked with like 12 clients, and those were high ticket retainers, and we're a boutique firm, and that was our max. So, you don't have to keep more and more and more and more and more to get more business. So it's being really, like you said this before, it's being really clear on what you're offering, who you're talking to, how you are communicating with those folks. And it's super game changing. And there's a woman who she's going to laugh. Hello. Because she just reached out yesterday. I mentioned her in my last podcast, and she had wrote to me on LinkedIn, and I've never met her before. And she was like, I can't remember what post I had posted, or she listens to the podcast and was like, I'm 62, I'm going out on my own. And then she wrote me a note, and she's like, did you just mention me in your podcast? I'm like, I sure did, because it's my why. It goes back to that Google Drive you had, or the one document of the why that you're doing something. And so of being of value. So it's not thinking about this going after 17,000 people and having this diluted message. It's like, I am talking right to you. Yep. And she heard it, and now we're communicating, and we're going to meet. Yeah. So that's what you want.
You know what you just said that I love too is, first of all, getting into the brain of your audience is a really hard thing to do. And it is a pursuit that is always evolving. That is the hardest thing as a business owner, in my opinion, because that's the holy grail, right? The holy grail is actually being so in tune with your audience and knowing exactly how to speak to them, that that they are just going to like come to you. I mean, that is powerful stuff. And that is very hard to do. But the more that you dig at that, and the more that you like try to understand the psychographics, like, I don't care how much money you make. I don't care if you like Starbucks. I don't care, how old you are, to be honest with you. It's about like getting, kind of what you said kind of triggered me, is like, and I know you're kind of in this space of like midlife and all that stuff, but like starting over, right? So I imagine like, yes, she's 62, but I bet you also attract people that are like in their 40s or, either, because it's not about the age. My guess is that you probably attract women that are like making big pivots, like huge shifts in their life, and they're scared and they don't know how, or they think their time has passed. And you can think your time has passed 30, in your 30s, you can think you're too late, right? So it's not even about the age sometimes. It's about like the mentality of like, I've missed the boat, and like getting into that deeper level of understanding of like, that's how your audience thinks. And then being able to speak to that deep level, that is where the magic starts to happen. And that's why you don't need a huge audience. You just really need to understand and be in tune with your people.
And so you've told all your stories too, which I think are so important, of how everyone gets it wrong. And it's not even getting it wrong. You have to just start. I tell this to clients all the time. You've got to start, because you're not going to know. You have an idea of who your person is, and then you refine and refine. And I kind of started out with entrepreneurs. Then I went really wide. going, oh, I'm just talking to everyone because I'm going to save every woman over 40 and change the world and just let them know they're not too fucking old and this and that. And I realized I was diluting who I was talking to. And I honed it back in. I'm like, actually, really, who am I? Who can I greatly impact? Like, who is my person? So to your point, now it's the woman 40 plus. It's the woman who's too scared to like get her voice out there. She's got her business. And if you don't get out there, and it's the whole stepping into the spotlight, if you don't step into the spotlight, you ain't going to get seen, heard, and paid and make an impact. And so it's as soon as I kind of crystallize that and then going, here are all my gifts, almost 30 years in PR and marketing. And here, by the way, is who I'm helping. I'm very specific. It's women, entrepreneurs, and solopreneurs. Then all of a sudden they're coming. Like I was telling you before we got on, I could feel them coming before being the metaphysical, before I sort of officially launched the agency. But I wouldn't have gotten to that place. You wouldn't have gotten to your place without just, for me, it was like 3 years ago, just going to Instagram and saying, this is who I am. I was 51 at the time. And this is what I'm going to do. And I'm all in on women. I didn't know a podcast was in the mix. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know I was going to start an agency again. And you just have to take those steps to do it. And the clearer you get, the more the other people drop away and your people start to run to you.
Well, I mean, 100%. I mean, if you would have told me even 3 years ago that I would be living in Europe with my family and I had a business that is like 90% online and I'm running masterminds and coaching, I would have laughed in your face because my entire business was making videos for brands with a team. I had a studio in Brooklyn. Like, I mean, it's wild how quickly things can move if you allow yourself to be curious. Curiosity is so important because if you're too rigid, and I was like, nope, I run a video production company. Like that's what I do. But deep down in my soul, I knew I was something was off. Something always felt off. You know it, you feel it in like your body, like something is just like not right. And I could never really like crystallize it. But now that I am doing what I 100% should be doing, not to say that's still not other challenges. You always have like new challenges arise because there's new skills to be learned. Like now I'm learning about evergreen funnels. Like I can't even talk about evergreen funnels, but I'm in a program learning about it, right? Because you're always learning. But I'm like sitting in Europe in Lisbon with my family. And honestly, it's my business that has allowed us to move here. So it's really powerful when you, like you said, and I know that's, you'll just start, but truly just start a little bit today, and you can't think too far down the line. Just think about doing a little something just today, just one thing, right? Because it's all cumulative.
100%. I'm glad I want to end on this of just women investing in themselves. And because after I kind of started, and I had done a mastermind during COVID, a big group mastermind. So that was my very first time investing. And I was like, all right, well, I've got the time, I had a couple of clients, but I have some extra time. Like, let's do this. And then you keep investing and you can get to places faster and you don't feel so alone because it is hard. And women over 40, there are kids, there's just a lot going on. I just mentioned this in my last podcast, that if we were doing this in our 20s and 30s, it's so much easier because there's no responsibility. But as you get to be an older woman in business, there's a lot more on the line. There are kids, there's parents, there's this, there's that, there's health, there's marriage, like all this stuff we're dealing with. And so we don't have all like endless time. And so we've got to I'm all for what is a hack? Can I hire one business coach for $1,000 an hour to dissect my business and tell me everything I need to know to pivot? And I did it. Yes, I did. Because that saved me 6 months of trauma and drama when I went to the person who has this established business to take me to the next level to get clarity. And so now, I'll have to spend that kind of money, but I'm just using it as a point where you're investing in yourself on funnels. We have to keep, because we invest in other things like trips and this and that and the other. And I've literally put all my money back into my business. I haven't taken European vacations. I don't buy designer bags. I've put all my money the past years into me because I know that's going to have the biggest ROI. Plus I have 3 kids that are going to go to college and all that. So, and I am building this new business in a way that I haven't done before. And like you said, we all are building businesses in ways that haven't been done before. When I first started my first agency in 2003, mean, what was even happening in 2003? And that was just referrals and this and that. I didn't have to be honest, I didn't have to work. I worked very hard for clients. I didn't have to work hard to market it. Today, no matter what you're doing, it's just different. Like when we started at the beginning of our conversation. So I'm so glad we had this conversation because, and like I just told a client yesterday, there's only you. And people, we were looking at an opportunity for her. I said, you have to have something to offer them because you're going to go talk, they're going to fall in love with you. And then what's next? What are you going to offer them? And you get to do it. You know, we get to do it and your people are out there.
Yeah.
So,
and I like, and also too, just like what you said before, this is why it's really important not to compare yourself to someone that you see online that doesn't have the same life as you. So like, there's no point in comparing your ability to show up or not show up to, you know, maybe the 30-year-old young woman who doesn't have kids yet and has her time to do whatever she wants, doesn't have response. Like, you know, and you forget that because quite often, you know, you look at people and like, oh, they're here, but then you like, or, you know, the dude who doesn't have kids, who's like bro marketing on LinkedIn that has 100,000 followers, but like, yeah, he doesn't, we don't have the same life. So that's also a reminder too, that it's like I always like to look, my inspirations are always people that they're mothers. They tend to be mothers, except, you know, Oprah's everyone's mom, but like, do you know what I mean? Like I tend to look for people that like understand what it's like to be a mother, understand like, you know, kind of have, you know, similar psychographic to me, right? That doesn't mean they need to be like me. But the other thing I was saying too is that oh my God, I don't know what I was gonna say. I had it in my brain and then I just
well, think about it because I want to talk 2 seconds about the bro marketing, and that's something to really think about. And it goes so deep too, because somebody actually did a study on all these men with the big podcasts, how the percentage of women that they have on, it's abysmally low. It's like under 10%, I want to say, for these big podcasts. And so and that's why I say it's hard to get women's voices heard. And that's why we have to step out and do all this. This is why we're having this conversation and you're on the show, is because we really do have to fight for that space. And it's like these guys, and they just bring on more men. And they actually, in this one health podcast, they brought in a man to talk about like female health and stuff. I'm like, you couldn't bring on a women's doctor to talk about menopause? You should have seen the backlash on that. I was like, for the love of God. It was a really big podcast. So, you know, we have to fight to get out there and always look. Yeah. I was just talking about this on my last podcast, that to your point, the guy on LinkedIn, and even if he does have kids, probably his wife's doing all of it. Sorry, in this day and age, we know all the unpaid. So there's stuff on the side. And also think too, the people that you're looking to, like the Jasmine Stars of the world, they've built their businesses. I compare myself to Mel Robbins, who has probably a team of 20, you know, but she's inspirational because things are tight and locked in. We can learn from everybody, but just remember, and that's why people relate to you, people relate to me. I'm always bringing it home. Like I'm building a business and serving clients, and I'm crying in my chairs at night because my kid's about to go off to college and there's all the stuff and there's 2 more kids at home, you know. So to your point, those are my little buckets, because I get you. I am you. I'm helping me. I'm helping you. I'm helping us. So everyone just stop looking around, because comparison is the thief of joy. And if, you know, you can learn some things from people, but no, I'm not jetting to Capri every day with a new designer bag. That's not me. It's not who I'm talking to. I'll get there. That's a goal once these kids are out the door.
Yeah.
Then maybe I'll be a travel influencer when I'm 65. But you know, for right now, this is what we're all doing. And the more, like we're saying, is, you know, tying this all up, the more that we're so clear on who we are, what we're offering, who we're helping, the better. And just don't be afraid of it, because if you don't get up and out, your people aren't going to find you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, hard work is not the antidote to success. Often it's important, but more important is that you're heard and that your ideas are understood and that you connect, because that's going to give you the access to the closed doors and the opportunities that you're not even thinking about.
So I'm going to ask you one final question before my final. So there's, you know, women out there listening right now.
Okay.
We're like, God, Jen and Patrice are telling me we've got to go out. I've got to be authentic. What does it mean? What are 3 steps that they could take right now to start showing up?
To start showing up. So, I mean, first of all, pick a platform, right? So I'm a video person, and I think, storytelling and video combined is a very lethal combination. It's a powerful combination. But I often say, and this is not like, oh my God, like unbelievable advice, but something like, Instagram stories, it's like they disappear, right? I mean, it's like a low level way to kind of like get comfortable with showing your face. No one expects anything fancy. It's there for raw behind the scenes, like, low level production type stuff. It's like a good, like, dip toe in the water of like, and even if you don't want to, for some people, that's a scary concept to just like start talking to the camera. So I get that that's not even possible for someone maybe at first. Well, then let us hear your voice, right? Like narrate, right? So maybe you're showing us like your workspace and you're showing us like, okay, this is the desk I have, and this is like mug I drink out of every day. And oh, yeah, that's a picture of my cat. Like, and you don't need to show your face, but even hearing your voice is better than just having like a static photo, because again, the more senses that you can enact, the greater the connection you can have to someone. So I would say, start low lift, something like that'll disappear. And then the other thing is like, look, at the end of the day, every single person there's certain like universal stories that people love to hear. So start easy. Why did you start your business? Like start there, right? And and maybe if getting on video feels daunting, then take a picture of yourself and write a little caption in your social about why you started your business. So at least there's some sort of like, let me see you, let me have some storytelling. I mean, and the thing is, it's a feedback loop, because I've never met anyone. So for example, I had a woman in my program yesterday. She's a financial coach. She's been in my orbit for so long. And I swear to God, I have known nothing about her really until yesterday. And I told her this. I go, you don't, I knew she was in finance. That's it. Women in financial literacy. Okay. Yesterday, she had a total breakthrough in our session, and she shared with the group a really personable moment about her childhood. She didn't get gritty. She didn't like get into all the dirty details, but it was like a 1 or 2 sentence thing where in that moment, I understood why she did what she did. And she told us in the group, in our private group today, she goes, I went on my social for the first time and I told everyone why I do this job, why I decided to leave my career and start financial literacy consulting company for women. And she was blown away. I mean, I'm not blown away because I knew it would happen to do that, but like she was blown away at all the positive reinforcement that she got. And this has taken her years to do. And I think the lid has been lifted from her. She just said, she's like, I feel different. And that's the thing. When you start feeling like you don't need to be shameful, and shameful is a strong word, but shameful, embarrassed, nervous, when you stop feeling like you have to feel like that, if you put yourself out there, you actually start like feeling lighter, and because people respond to that. People can feel that. That's attractive to people because most people want to feel like that too. So when they see someone doing that, it's often triggering. And often, and it's sure, could it be triggering bad? Maybe. But for most people, when you see people that are doing that, you're like, oh, I want to do that too. Or like, I wish I could do that. Well, you can. And if you kind of like tiptoe your way in, you don't need to share every single, skeleton in your closet on social media. You shouldn't. It becomes easier. And the feedback you get, I know it's going to be good. That also feeds you for the next time you do it. And also what happens is you raise your own line of belief and comfort level. So the next time you go to share, you're not starting at the same place that you did. You're starting a little bit rougher in a good way. It's like this, like a scar, right?
Oh, I'm glad you shared that story. That's such a great way to end because you are flexing this muscle. So once you do it once, then you do it again, and then you realize, and I wanted to bring up this important point too, is something you said about this woman reminded me of this, that really, truly, we are, I think, all screaming just to be seen for who we are. Because
Mhm.
for so long, I'm Gen X. I know you're like older millennial at the ripe old age of 42, but really, you're still in that same realm where we're just kind of all told, women especially, to not show up as your true self. We weren't allowed to show up as our true self, especially in corporate America. I'm sure you saw this in the broadcast world.
Mhm.
And so the concept, we all think that if we show up as ourselves, because if we did that before, we would look weak. We would look like we can't do our job. We're not authoritative like the guys, and we've got to, none of that back in the day was welcomed, honored. No one gave a shit. Like, you got to show up, produce. Like, you're not a human being. All that's like outside of, all outside of work. Like, who cares what's going on outside, because
Yeah.
you got to show up and do your thing. So there's a lot of this stuff we've got to peel back. And women, and I know especially kind of once you hit this 40, like, I can't pretend to be somebody I'm not.
No, we don't have time. I don't have time. You don't have time for that anymore, because your life does, like, yeah. I mean, I know I'm like, I'm early 40s, but like, oh my God. I mean, but I had, when I had an 18th surprise birthday party, I was hysterical because I was like, oh, I felt like closer to the grave. I always felt like this bit of mortality on my soul. But also, we now live in a world, like I said, wrapping it up to the beginning of our conversation, we live in a different world. Your business brand and your personal brand are the same. It is not okay anymore to be anonymous. That is not what people want. And it's also good because, as we see, the world is burning, and the patriarchy, not to sound like cliche, but the world that we've existed in and as women have been told that you need to operate in, guess what? It does not work. Really bad things happen. And we're witnessing this in like really crazy, intense times all over the world. And so guess what? The old rules of separation and business over here and personal over here, that doesn't fly anymore, because that's not the world. That's not what people want. That's not okay. I said this today to someone. I said, look, being human is in, and it sounds so like, wait, what? But being human is in, like, this whole anonymous and these faceless marketing things that are popping up all over. They drive me nuts. Like, it's, yeah, people are craving something deeper and more connective, because it's like, yeah, it's like a response to, I mean, this is like getting down a different path, but yes, being human is in.
Yeah, being human is in and connection is
in.
in. And that, because I talk to so many women all the time. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday, a client, just about the community and connection piece. And, she wants to build programs and things. I'm like, have an in-person women are dying for this in-person
Yeah.
component of it. It's like the real humanity. It's people thank me all the time for telling it like it is. And of course, I've been at this for a long time. So you listen to this podcast, I've said everything. You know it all. And I don't sugarcoat anything. Nobody's life is perfect. And, and I've never, like, you're the one who's like had the early, like, you thought you were going to die at 18. I've always been the overshare. I joke with my podcast manager that I'm never going to have a 30-minute podcast with a guest. I talk too much. Like, I'm the last one to leave a party. If you came to my house, Patrice, I'd be like, no, don't go. It's 1:00 in the morning, but don't leave. Like that.
Oh,
But
I
that's who I
wouldn't.
am.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
That's who I am.
I'm
I'm
just
not
kidding.
going to.
We would not be good together, Jen. Well, I think we were on the retreat. We were like still in the hot tub at like 3. Like, yeah, it is very much, I'm like, I like peak at 3 a.m. I'm like, oh, this is where I start coming alive. Like,
Right.
all
Like,
these
yeah,
5 a.m.ers. I'm like, no, thanks.
that's where my
I
DJ
can see
skills came
5 a.m.
alive.
on the other side, but like, yeah, I'm a night owl, but I've had to change that with 3 young kids. But anyway, I hear you.
I know we digress, but the truth is, so it's everyone, I think, to wrap it up in a bow, it's don't be afraid to be you, because that's what people want. It's gonna set you free. It's gonna help your business. It's gonna make it all more fun because you're just showing up as you.
Yeah. And can I also say this too? Like, the hardest part about starting a business is actually deciding to start the business, to actually go through that mental gymnastics of saying, you know what, I'm either not going to continue in my corporate America path, or I'm actually going to leave corporate America to start a new path. The level of self-confidence and just like sense of self that you need to even make that decision, that is the hardest thing that you will do as a business owner. So if you are able to do that, you're good. Like this showing up thing and marketing and like, oh my God, like that is not the hardest thing that you've done. You've already done the hardest thing. So if you've already made that decision to do the business, go all in. Like, let's just hit it balls to the wall. Enough of this, like, I'm going to go halfway or I'm going to like, no, just go all in, because then even if it doesn't work, well, at least you know, because you put everything out on the table. It's like when people are like, oh, it didn't work or I'm not doing that well. I'm like, because you're not really doing it 100%. Like you're doing it 50%. Like, so it's like, I don't, so part of me is like, you've already done the hard thing, the hardest thing.
Deciding. Right. Deciding and just taking the leap. And then that is truly the hardest thing, because, and I was there with like the podcast years. Once you decide, you're like, okay, I'm a podcaster now. Holy shit. Well, showed up and did it. But that was the hardest thing, was starting. It's such a great way to end. The hardest thing is always starting, even like an exercise program, anything that's like, it's the hardest part is just going to the gym for the first time or hiring a trainer or whatever. You do it. And then now you're just tweaking and adding things and weights and marketing, whatever. You're just you're adding to it. You've already done the hardest thing. Well, I could clearly talk to you for 5 hours.
For 5 hours. We could literally talk for 5 hours. Yeah.
But, listeners, we'll let you go. There's so many, you're going to want to go back. And just so everybody knows too, there are transcripts available. If you didn't know, if you go into my show notes, there is a transcript of the entire show, because there are so many takeaways. Of course, I always pull these out and there's probably 50 reels I could make from this episode, but alas, I can't. But go into the transcript and you can highlight things and you can immediately implement so much of what Patrice has said into your business right now, and go take it out. And please, tag us too. If you go out and do something new and it's because you listen to this, please tag us, because I share everything. You all know that Patrice shares everything. And so we'll help shout you out. If you go, do something new, just say, I did it, and tag us, because that would be really fun to see if you went out and told a fun story. We're here for you to support you in that venture. So please tag us. So before I give you you share all your details with us, every guest finishes this sentence. I'm not too fucking old to.
Ooh, oh my God, I love this. Oh my God, you're like taking me, you're like, I'm like, oh my God, wait, ask me that one more time.
So I'm not too fucking old to.
I'm not too old to like accomplish like, I have a clear vision of how I want my life to be in this like freedom-based way. And I'm not too late. I'm not too late to do that. Like I am right on time. I'm on time to make my financial goals. I'm on time to, have my European summers off and still be making money. Like I didn't miss a boat on that. It's like I am right on time.
Well, I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. So tell everybody where they can find you and become part of your world and get some storytelling.
Once you're part of
storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just warning, once you're part of my dysfunctional family, like, people don't really leave. So you have to, come on in. Yeah. So no, I mean, Instagram at Patrice Poltzer, Poltzer, is my handle. And if you go to the link in the bio, like I have a website drop down menu. I'm also on LinkedIn, just almost, I think I'm going to home base this year. I'm very proud of myself. I've been very consistent for the past 3 months, which is a huge thing for me. I'm meeting new people there though, right? It's a new audience and I like a lot of the people. But yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram, my website, patricepoltzercreative.com. I have a newsletter every week that I write. So that's a really great way. If you go to my Instagram bio, my newsletter, sign up, it's free. Every week I have personal brand, storytelling, marketing, insights. I'm an open book. So, I have it's a good way to learn and grow your own business and also stay connected to what I have coming down the pipeline.
I love it. We're going to link all that in the show notes. Patrice, it's been like so incredibly amazing having you on today. I think we'll have to, when you master funnels, you'll have to come back on and teach us all about that.
Oh my God. I am trying. Not too old to learn funnels.
You're not too fucking old to learn the freaking funnels. So that's another
Yes.
conversation for another time. But my
Yes.
dear, thank you so much for zooming in all the way from Lisbon. And I look forward to seeing your beautiful face soon.
I know. Thank you. This was so fun. Bye.